I will talk to you of art,
Yes.
for there is nothing else.
Are you all ready to join me today on our trip to outer space?
Come along quietly or not.
You can have all the talent in the world and never get anywhere.
Some artist will bait a hook and let you bite upon it.
And now, without further ado,
hello folks, welcome to another episode of Planet Shivers. This is episode 19 and it's 2020. I haven't done one of these episodes in about a month. The holidays and things, it was hard to secure guests, so it just seemed better off to wait till after all the holidays and New Year's passed. So Happy New Year. And this first episode of 2020 is going to be a trippy one. Isaac and I sit down, just the two of us, no other guests, and he and I talk mainly about astral projection and lucid dreaming. Both of us have been dabbling in this and starting to practice it the later part of last year, going into this year. Isaac has an unbelievable amount of knowledge about it. I'm learning from him and learning from videos and literature that I'm reading right now. On loan to me from Isaac is a book that I'm working through called Advanced Autogenic Training and Primal Awareness, and we talk about this book and the author in the podcast. So before we get to the conversation itself, just want to throw a little plug here. Before Christmas, before the holidays, I thought of the idea of giving everybody who I wanted to give gifts to books. And there's a bookstore local here by me called Carol and Carol Books. And that's a fun bookstore that is probably on its way out. Floor-to-ceiling books, the whole bit. But I also wanted to try to check out another bookstore. So through some Google searches and such things, I stumbled upon Broad Street Books in Branchville, New Jersey. So from where I live, it's about a 50-minute drive. But I went there completely blind, not knowing what I was going to see. Was it going to suck? Was it going to be good? I had no clue. But it turned out to be an amazing bookstore that I want to tell you guys about. So again, it's Broad Street Books in Branchville, New Jersey, 1 Mill Street. And they just have all sorts of categories of books, very well organized, huge selection. Ethan and Suni, who run the joint, it's a family-owned business. They're very helpful. And if you have any interest in checking this place out, you can go online at www.broadstreetbooks.com. You can find them on Facebook at Broad Street Books NJ, New Jersey. And they're also on Instagram, and I believe the same handle. Shouldn't be too hard to find. Again, if you're in that area or want to do a mini little road trip somewhere for the day, definitely check out this bookstore. And on the way, if you're in the mood for kind of a gross meal, not gross, but it's kind of gross, there's this hot dog joint called Jumboland, which when I was a kid and I would come visit my father in PA for the weekends, sometimes we would stop there. I think we may have stopped there like once or twice. And their claim to fame then, so this is like in the late 90s, was they just had really big hot dogs. But they did something to them. Again, I was young. It's been forever since I've been there. But they did something to them where you bit them and it was like really crunchy and the texture was weird. And they had all these crazy toppings, which I think as a kid I wasn't into. I would eat hot dogs either plain or maybe with ketchup. And I'd always eat them from the middle, whatever that means. But Jumboland, if you're feeling adventurous, is not too far away from Broad Street Books. So you can check that place out too. It's more nostalgia for me than anything. Also, keep your eyes peeled on Albert Shivers' YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a visual art year in review, showing my favorite pieces from 2019 in a bit of a slideshow with some cool music. I haven't chosen the music yet. I'm going to try to pick a friend's music or some sort of local musician for the music for that. This way I don't get in trouble with any licensing rights or anything like that. And also moving forward, you may have seen on the same YouTube channel that I started to release video clips from past podcasts. I'm going to try to be doing more of that. And I'm going to be trying to film the upcoming podcasts that I plan on doing. I'm recording this and it should be released on Friday. Over the weekend, I'll be doing more podcast recordings and also the next coming week. I'm going to try more and more to film as much as I can of these to give you folks something to look at while you're watching the video. The art slideshows are really cool for the visual artists, but not everybody who's on is a visual artist. So I'm going to try to really broaden the amount of media that I'm doing with this project to give as many different ways to experience the podcast as possible. And yeah, that's my spiel. So let's get to the conversation between Isaac and myself about astral projection and lucid dreaming. Cool. All right. Well, it's another episode of Planet Shivers, and this time, just Isaac and I chilling. Isaac's usually on sound and fairly silent, but here we are. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some astral projection stuff, something that you and I have both been experimenting with as of late.
Yeah.
And I guess to folks who don't know what that is, you want to kind of like, maybe we can try to explain it as if someone doesn't know what it is.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess it's basically like the theory that our conscious is not directly inherent inside our physical bodies, and in fact we can, through a lot of training and discipline, we can take it and remotely transport it wherever our thoughts or intentions desire, like remotely view various places just by conscious will through higher meditation. So yeah, it's a really interesting concept that I've been into for quite some time, and yeah, something I'm still sort of working towards. There's been some, I think I've had some sort of glimpses like into that realm, just sort of been at the door, never really stepping through. I don't know about you, if you've had really just like full on sort of crazy visions or anything like that, but yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I haven't been like doing it or attempting to do it and studying it quite as long as you have. I first heard about it through our mutual friend Sandy, and it kind of, when she was talking to me about it, I wasn't at that level yet mentally, and it sort of went over my head.
Gotcha.
At the time.
Gotcha, yeah.
And so it was more recently, you and I hanging out, that we started talking about it more and kind of seeing what, like starting to really experiment with it.
Right, yeah.
So, for me, like, I'd say pretty much the same. I don't think I ever got very far with it, but I've gotten like a couple of feet through the door, like for moments.
Yeah.
And it was never anything. Too amazing, but it was kind of amazing. Like even just a little bit of it. So like basically, what it is it can be described as like an out-of-body experience.
There you go. That's the key word, yes.
Yeah, and for me, my experience with it was very simple. Where all I have ever done, and I've done it twice, was be unconscious on a couch. It happened once at my folks' house and once in my own apartment, where I'm out on the couch, yet I'm walking around the apartment or the house, just sort of like looking at things, and it was a weird feeling.
Oh yeah.
It was super weird, but that's about as far as I've gotten. There was like the time it happened at my folks' house, I did see like a little critter that wasn't there.
Oh yeah.
I think I told you about that.
Yeah, the weird little kiwi thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
But beyond that, that's about as like trippy as it's gotten. And mind anyone who's listening, like this isn't some sort of like take a drug and it happens. Like it's a mental thing that you sort of have to almost train yourself to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a practice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle, I think we're both kind of suffering from, I guess, is like sort of like the holy shit phenomenon, where like once you realize it's happening, it's like everything, like the state you've kind of been trying to achieve through like just total sort of relaxation and just like I guess objective. Yeah, it's like once you realize like you're actually like out of yourself and flying around, it's like this really like intense crazy feeling of like what you're actually doing, and it causes you to usually fall back into your body. So yeah, the one, I mean, I think the one clearest time I did it again, it was pretty short, and I was just like trying, I'm not sure if I was just super tired or was like actually trying to get there, but yeah, I just remember vividly just sort of like floating up from where I was just on my bed. Like I thought like I was getting up somehow, or I was sleepwalking, but then I like rotate 180 degrees downward and like just see my face right there. I just like see my body just kind of laid out. I'm sort of just like scanning up the side of my face, and then once I realize like what I think is going on, I just like zip right back in and wake up like, oh my god, that was pretty wild. But yeah, definitely it is 100% mental. I feel like the training you have to go through to be able to, I guess it could be described as passive volition, which is a type of practice found in like autogenic training and like, you know, shamanic viewing practices, where you really just have no attachment to what you're seeing or any real thought or emotion to like what you're really perceiving at the time. And in that state, you allow yourself to go forward to wherever you really intend to go. Like usually the best method I've found to sort of get there, I would say, is you know, you're laid out, you're usually laying down is the best thing, you know, but you know, meditating, whatever it is, you're just, you know, you're totally still, you're not moving a muscle. And I guess that's the key thing, because any, like, say when you go to sleep, any like impulse or urge you get to like either, you know, like scratch your face or, you know, roll over on your side, it's almost like it's your body's physiology trying to determine if you're actually like conscious or not. You know, it like sends these signals to determine whether or not, you know, it's time to like paralyze the body and, you know, let you sleep. And the way to bypass this is by any sort of urge or, you know, muscle twitch you know you want to have, you just will yourself, just nope, I'm not moving at all. And like it's almost like you're just playing dead, I guess could be the best way you can describe it. And after a period of like 20 minutes to half hour of just totally refusing to move a single muscle, you'll feel this really weird sensation of just, it's just like this really subtle stillness just kind of like flooding your body, I guess would be the best way. It's like you almost lose feeling, you become numb, and if you try to move, you find you can't, and you're 100% in the sleep paralysis state, which again in itself is a freaky, like really freaky place to be, you know, like that's where people feel like, you know, possessions can happen and things like that. But I don't know, wouldn't know too much about that, haven't had any experience with that. But yeah, no, it's from there you could definitely choose to kind of follow this weird little obviously, you know, in your visual field at this point you'll see a lot of swirls, a lot of spirals, and you know, some people see like grid patterns, like grids laid out that start like sort of folding in over themselves. But there's a central point through the weird hazy weirdness that you see pulsating in the visual field, and through that, if you focus just on that, it's almost like, okay, it's really hard to explain, but yeah, it's like you're going through a tunnel of light or something. It's just like this weird mandala you're kind of just like diving through, and once you like reach the end or whatever, like that's when you sort of pop out. I guess that could be the best way I could describe it. It's really weird, but yeah, I associate like the color. Definitely, the big part of this is like you see the like an indigo color and like a purpley indigo sort of take up your, you know, what you see with your eyes closed, and it starts pulsating outwards and inwards. And that's actually the first time I kind of like got into this. I think I was 11. I was in the back seat of the car driving back from a Thanksgiving dinner, and we were just on the highway. I was just kind of like had my head against the window and just kind of zoning out, like watching the cars, you know, pass back and forth. I just like was closing my eyes and just focusing on just sort of the weird fuzzy staticky stuff you see with your eyes closed, and then just opening them. And I just got really relaxed, and I got to the point where like I closed my eyes and I could like see in my like visual static, like I could see cars like super crystal clear, like I could see the landscape moving and everything, like just totally preserved in my vision, but it was like moving. It was really weird, couldn't describe it, but yeah, it all kind of manifested out of the weird little grainy static you see. But yeah.
Do you find that state to be a delicate one?
Well, I mean, it's hard to describe. I mean, you know, anyone who can just sort of like focus and close their eyes and like breathe deep for like 5 minutes. I mean, at least that's what I found. It's like without fail, you will see like a purple sort of, you know, a purple haze, like envelop your vision, and you just sort of like once you realize that, you could just sort of follow it around. And but yeah, as far as like following it through and like not being sort of like taken by it or like amazed or like sort of awed by like the patterns that it becomes, because it does like shift in these weird like abstract geometric shapes. Yeah, you know, it could go either way. It really just depends whether or not, you know, you can observe it without having any attachment to it. And because I mean, I think that's like the whole key with this here is that, you know, you're leaving behind the attachment you have to the physical world and allowing yourself to sort of like put your consciousness outside of yourself to go wherever it wants. Sorry, I forgot the question.
Well, like, so for me, in those two instances, like we were talking about whether or not it's a delicate state to be in.
Mm-hmm.
When it happened to me either time, and my body was asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
And I'm walking around my apartment in real time, in total control of where I'm looking, where I'm walking. It felt like there was a part of me that still knew like that I was over there laying on a couch.
Yeah.
And somewhere my subconscious was telling me like, if I do anything, I will pull myself back into my body, like,
mm-hmm.
and just be up,
yeah,
and be normal again, laying on a couch.
Right.
Like to me, it felt like a land, a plane between awake and asleep.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely like what they call like the twilight state, where yeah, that's the other thing too. The sleep paralysis method of like getting into it. There is a way, you know, at least I've heard. I'm not sure if I've really remembered doing this or not, but once you're fully conscious and your body's asleep, you could actually choose to sort of go under, like into your subconscious mind, like sort of pull inwards instead of out, and like you will sort of wake up or just instantly find yourself in this you know, like a lucid dream, like some kind of internal sort of thing you've constructed where, you know, again, you're fully aware, you've brought your consciousness there, and it's free to make whatever it wants of you know, the inside world, which I find is pretty interesting. But oh man, it's something. I'm not sure if it's like a tool that, you know, would have any real sort of benefit, or if it could be like abused or like used to, you know, like gain power. I mean, my big thing I wanted to do was just fly around. That was my goal, fly around, trying to like remotely locate like, precious metals in the earth and shit like that. Try to find, go to a place where you haven't been before in person, like observe it, go back there, see if it's like it matches up to what you remember. And then, I don't know, I just feel like it's a lot of power if it is indeed a real thing that you can do. It's really hard to say, because I mean, you could always say it's whatever you see there is just totally your own sort of dreaming, like you're only just in a dream state, kind of just writing out this sort of process your brain's going through.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I'm not really sure. It's cool though.
Yeah, it's a trippy feeling.
Yeah,
and
it
I
really
guess
is.
in achieving it, it's just all like baby steps, really.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said about it. I mean, you really, outside of like being asleep and like remembering dreams, there's no real like reference point you have to like feeling. Well, like I mean, like not feeling it. Like you feel nothing. Like you are just vision. You're just like not even really thoughts, more of like intentions. Your intentions they sort of change when you're under those sort of circumstances. But yeah, I mean, the best way I could describe it, think of yourself as like a floating eyeball, like this just weird sort of eyeball ghost thing, except the pupil is like envelops the entire sort of sphere. Like you're just this 360 degrees of just black vision, so to speak. Like you take it in from all sides, and again, whatever you see in the sort of visual field that you're in is like whatever you're drawn to, that's sort of where you will travel to. So yeah, it definitely pays, I think, to go in with some kind of intention, if you're just willing to experiment. I mean, one of my friends I went to school with, he was also sort of into this. We were messing around trying to get like out of body back in like middle school, and like he said he was seeing a lot of like like he'd see beings walking around and stuff, like doing it at night. He'd go outside and there'd be like people like walking around his yard and down the road and everything, and so it is pretty freaky. But again, I just feel like the fact that we're here anyway in the physical plane says enough that like we're separated from whatever's out there. There's no real way to be harmed or be damaged in any way by what you see, as long as you believe that nothing that you're experiencing can really harm you to begin with. So yeah, I guess I would say it's a fun thing to practice, get into. It does have a lot of sort of parallels with, again, like the the shamanic training, like the vision training, like being able to just sort of like will things into your mind, like just to be able to see things. And I messed around a little bit with that, but again, haven't really got too far. It's really just a question of like subconscious control to like just see things and just not have any sort of attachment to them, I guess would be the best way I could describe it.
So what is the shamanic training?
I guess it could be broken down into like two things. There's like the primal mind awareness training and like the autogenic sort of training. I mean, I had a brief sort of study with this one fire shaman who was I met him up in Vermont on this farm, but he had spent like at least 5 years with the Huichol indigenous people down in South America. Not exactly sure what country it was at the time, but yeah, he was really into it, and he was full on like legitimate shaman who could like just sort of look at a person and just see kind of exactly what's going on, and then it was pretty wild. So yeah, we were working up there together, and just he was sort of like showing me the ropes with this whole thing. He wrote a book about it. It's again, yeah, the autogenic training and primal mind awareness. It's James Andrita. He's a pretty learned dude. Knows a lot of shit. He's been around there. But yeah, so yeah, I was working with him for about, I'd say, 3 months which wasn't that long of a time, but in that time I found, there was definitely times, even before I was working with this, where I've seen, like, again, I'm, like, laying down, and, like, all of a sudden, like, it's just like a snapshot, like a camera flash, like, over what I'm seeing with my eyes closed, and it's just like a perfect sort of photorealistic image or scene of, like, some place or, like, some object. Like, I'm, like, looking at it, like, right there, in front of me, although it's just, like, me with my eyes closed. So yeah, no, it was weird. I was trying to think what I've done with it. Oh yeah, okay, this one time I a few years ago I lost this ring I had. It really sucked. It was like this gold ring. I really liked it. It just somehow, like, escaped me, and I was thinking maybe I could, like, through, like, autogenic training or astral projection, be able to, like, sort of, like, direct myself to where I could, like, find a certain object. Like, that's something I just used as an example. That's, like, one thing I just decided to look for. And I didn't get too far, but in doing this, again and again, I was doing it for, like, a week, just trying to sort of focus on this one thing. And the closest I got was I started seeing, like, this rotating, like, circle. It was like a ring, pretty much, but it was, like, very sort of faint, I guess you could say. Like, I'd only see certain sort of angles of it that were, like, caught by light, but it was, like, I was seeing, like, gold flashes. And I don't know if that really means anything, but that was pretty cool. And yeah, sort of just, it's a good way to practice, just telling it yourself to something you'd want to see, or a person's face you'd want to, like, just look at and just totally forget about it. And judging on, like, where you are mentally, like,
So, like, yeah, you mentioned lucid dreaming, and I had one night where I was attempting to astral project, but I totally fell asleep. But what it turned into was a lucid dream. I was just, like, in this version, I guess my mind's version of some sort of underworld with not fire, but like this very thick smoke and burning embers.
yeah.
Some sort of plant life that was somehow surviving in this weird plane, and I was traveling through it about less than a foot off the ground, just sort of floating through, looking at things. Like, there were bodies and they were melting. It was gruesome.
Yeah.
And the only other, like, living things that I seen were just figures within the smoke. Like, almost like looking at someone through, like, a shower door that's like glazed or just hazy.
Yeah.
I seen the figures of humanoids through the smoke. But nothing, I never encountered them, and they never seen me and came to me. I was just kind of floating through, and I was in control of myself. I was in control of where I was looking. I was in control of the directions I would float in. So that was an astral projection attempt that turned into a lucid dream.
Man.
So there may not, again, I don't know a whole bunch about it either, but there may not be that big of a bridge between the two even.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I've had similar experiences where, like, I've been in lucid dreams, and, like, once I realize that like, what I'm doing, it's again like, oh my god, and just wake up again. So yeah, you're definitely, whatever it is, I think it definitely, the conscious part of who you are is not directly bound just to, like, like the mind or the like organic sort of machinery that's, like, supposedly keeping it up and running. It is something else, in my opinion.
I always feel like we can go infinitely inward. Like, there's just so much of our brain we don't use. And what's it doing? Like, what's that hunk of meat
There's something
doing up there?
it's
like,
always going,
Yeah. and could these things be just a whole untapped source of our own humanity? Then what would be interesting to me is, I thought of this the other day, so we have no idea, okay, so what we know modernly is that this is a capability of us.
Yeah, it's a physiological or evolutionary sort of, higher awareness thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, who's to say that some of the gap in what we know of ancient civilizations isn't that they were doing it really well?
No, I think that's totally where it's been at, Yeah, I mean, holy shit. There's so many examples of, just things that, people, thousands of years ago were, pulling off that, even today we aren't capable of. I mean, namely, the, what is it? I mean, it's all over the world, megalithic sites and everything, where you see, there's freaking, stones fitted together that weigh, multiple tons that are just, even today, haven't moved, a millimeter. You can't get anything in between these. I mean, that's kind of besides the point. But yeah, it's who's to say that, there's no real record of what's been going on or anything. Yeah, there's no real way of knowing that, the reason, there's no record of really what's been going on, in ancient civilizations, or leading to whether they were extremely advanced, way beyond our technical ability, was just because their sort of knowledge or their power that they were drawing from existed totally within the matrix of the mind. Their memory was so photographic and just three-dimensional that they could just remember their entire sort of lifetime, a tape recorder, pull out any detail, any sort of anything that was said, anything they learned was just so ingrained in them, which today is I mean, pretty much machines do most of the thinking for us when it comes down to it. The use of memory, I think, is just slowly just atrophying more and more the more we just use the interneted brain that is just thinking it for us. I guess that could just be one example.
With the thought that maybe these people were doing a lot of astral projection and even lucid dreaming, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
That then could have transferred to all sorts of elements of their, let's just say, physical life.
Yeah.
They could have brought knowledge back with them from those planes. They could have brought artistic ideas back from those planes.
Definitely not. Yeah. I guess it could be considered the Hermetic tradition, or whoever follows namely the Thoth or the Hermes, who has there's this sort of holographic center of records, almost this giant sort of library somewhere, on some dimension higher or lower, where we're just everything's sort of recorded. I mean, I guess that's just one example. I don't know, some Tibetans believe that I guess the higher monks would get to this state through just hours of meditation or days of meditation, where again they would go away to much higher planes and have entire live sort of entire lifetimes gaining wisdom from that, being involved in these crazy celestial battles and shit, and coming back down with all this, again, all this knowledge. I mean, that was a big part of, that's a big part of many religions, it's as soon as you leave this world, you just sort of float on as a passive observer until you're sort of sucked into some other energy well taking you somewhere else.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what's fun about it, is that we don't really know that mystery of it and the journey to get there. And I'm also curious to the fact, is everybody's, are the experiences of these things of traveling to another plane different for everybody? How much does it base itself on our own experiences and our own like state of mind going into it.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, I mean, the whole concept of whatever it is, like, you know, God or Great Spirit, where it's like, you know, there's this whole thing has been imagined by some like giant sort of scheme, but at the same time, part of that scheme are like just innumerable other examples of their own sort of conscious sort of being, you know, like of the same magnitude, you know, like something that is aware and that thinks is like, you know, it's a sense of part of like the bigger sort of awareness, the bigger sort of, you know, there's been like accounts with like, you know, the ayahuasca schools and everything, people, you know, sitting together in rooms doing like the again, like vision ceremonies, you know, induced by like substance, induced by like various plants and things like that in ritual. They've all, you know, had the same sort of, you know, drink mixture, whatever it would be, smoke, and report going to a similar place, a similar plane, like being there together, or at least recounting similar experiences once they get back. And again, it's hard to say if that's just because they were sort of on the same sort of trip, or whether they traveled together to a different realm. It's hard to tell without actually, you know, trying it out for yourself. It is weird. It really is at the same time like subjective and objective between two different conscious forces, you know. Like, there's really no way of knowing what it's going to be like from one walk of life to the other. I mean, it's really hard to say, you know. I mean, anything you consume like alters your conscious on some level, you know, whether it's like, you know, coffee or just any food, water. It could, some things just have a really sort of like strong effect on where you're at, you know. Just something you can eat can just totally send you into another place. But yeah, I don't know. With all this stuff, I've experimented a little bit, you know, with, you know. I remember one time I got really good, and I don't know, I just laid down and I figured while I was being all like, you know, new agey hippie, I took this giant crystal and I just like laid it like over my heart, I guess. That's where I put it, and I was actually just sitting there for a while, just like shivering. That is like from earlier. I was gonna say I do. Some things do just make me just totally just convulse. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm not cold, but I feel like I'm just like shivering. Like I don't know what it is, but yeah, I got there and I got really paranoid and was like, okay, I'm gonna go lay down. So when I get there, I have this rock just sitting on my chest, and I'm just like sitting down, like looking at all the patterns or whatever I'm seeing. It's just like, you know, just again scanning whatever my eyes are seeing, all the closed, and like, yeah, the purple sort of violety haze comes in, and it starts like pulsing out and in, but it's like it's different. I don't know what it is. I remember like seeing these different vertices, like these different lines sort of kind of coming out of nothing. They just sort of like appeared there and just drew themselves out into this like three-dimensional geometric object.
Mm-hmm.
And it was within like the purple sort of pulsating mass that I was seeing, but there was like this light emanating from the center of it, and like whenever I was breathing, whenever like my blood was circulating, I don't know, I just felt really sort of in touch with this sort of like wave-like motion that this weird object I was seeing had. And as like, you know, I breathed in, like it would like glow, like the light from the center of it would like kind of get brighter, and it would illuminate more of the sort of crystalline structure of it, and I just exhale and it would like, you know, subside, and I just kept doing this, and I think eventually I was very exhausted, just fell asleep, but hey, it was kind of cool. That freaked me out. The cat just jumped up there, but
you know, we're getting into this like space now, or
yeah,
peripheral visions.
Yeah, a little bit. It freaked
now
me out.
We're all like, what? Huh?
Yeah, it's really crazy, you know, like with the, well, like conscious wise, and yeah, a lot of it's kind of like looked over in today's world. Yeah, again too with the whole peripheral vision things, another thing. Little dog.
What do you mean about the peripheral vision?
Yeah, I was getting into a little bit of that too. at one point I was practicing, I guess, I was practicing a wide angle vision. I guess is a technique used. It was used widely, I'm sure by like every different people across the world for like thousands of years before this most recent incarnation of civilization sprung up with cities. When people had to live among just the wilderness, sort of follow around the big animals and just subsist off anything they could find. Like they need to sort of be a lot more in touch with their surroundings in order to like survive and thrive within them. So I went to a school involved mainly like education and like tracking and stuff like that, like mainly like Apache teachings from mainly with like it was focused a lot on like tracking of animals and just watching like how the environment is affected as like ripples, like any action caused out in the world will like radiate outwards in concentric rings, and like there's a way to like see how things were affected a certain way and like why and like how long ago did an animal like pass by. And what I found really makes it easier to like track things, kind of like decipher what's happened before you even got there, is a wide angle vision. And basically it's a practice of like removing your peripheral and like seeing your entire visual field as like one continuous image. Like how the eye works is it takes like a bunch of like snapshots every second, like a bunch of little pictures, and like kind of stitches together the imagery that it sees into like for your brain to like process your visual field and what you're seeing. But that's not technically what you're seeing. It's just your body's hardware. It's just like what your eye is doing. It's just your eye's best shot at what it's sort of gathering. But there is a way physiologically to sort of take in your surroundings as like a continuous stream of information. And when you do that, you'll notice your vision vision widens, and your sensitivity to light changes. You're able to see a lot better in the dark, and like various obstructions on the ground are like a lot clearer. I mean, any obstruction in general is a lot more evident to you. And that does stem, again, like this is achieved through, again, lots of practice, like staring at one single point for like hours until like everything around it kind of like melts together, and you see it as this sort of like woven sort of net that's like everything in itself is connected. I mean, that's just my experience anyway. But yeah, it does stem mainly from the thought or the notion that you are as connected to your environment as your environment is to you, I suppose.
Well, that's one thing like that I've heard about when people say when like adrenaline kicks in and time slows down.
Yeah.
Or the feeling of time slowing down really is, so like for the sake of my point, let's just say that your eye takes 100 snapshots a second.
Yeah.
When that adrenaline rush kicks in, it's taking way more snapshots per second.
Right.
So you feel as if time is slowing down, but really you're just taking in more information than you used to.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's just definitely it. Body has an overdrive response. It's strange. It also it does tie back into the whole like autogenic thing. Just the way it like enables you to like, like that is the sympathetic nerve response. It's like a physiological thing your body does and it's triggered when it senses a threat. But there is a way to just trigger that, or at least portions of that, response consciously, again through like just I guess rule of the subconscious mind. Because again, that is totally like to be able to like process things like in a much clearer sort of crisp way. Like that does come with the fight or flight response. You can't get there with, really deep sort of concentration and meditation and, just will to raise your, like a will to raise your awareness, I guess. It's,
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Planet Shivers podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the Albert Shivers YouTube channel, as well as iTunes, Spotify, the podcast app, and Google Play, and SoundCloud. You can find more of my work and work on the podcast on my Instagram handle, which is @AlbertShivers. You can see Isaac's work and follow him on Instagram at when_in_zen. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.